Snow falls softly on Manhattan's glittering skyline. Inside a penthouse office, Jason Reiner, 28, stares at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Behind him, his father's voice echoes with disapproval. Jason's jaw tightens. He spent his entire life chasing a ghost of approval that never materializes. A cramped Ohio apartment where Skye Moore, 26, counts pills for her ailing father, her own dreams buried under medical bills and student debt. She glances at her hospitality degree on the wall, a reminder of what could have been. 2 souls. 1 December. A miracle neither saw coming. The morning sun barely penetrated the steel and glass fortress that was Reiner Hospitality's headquarters. Jason Reiner stood in his father's corner office, the weight of expectation pressing down on his shoulders like an iron yoke. "The Ohio property is hemorrhaging money," Rob Reiner announced, not looking up from the quarterly reports spread across his mahogany desk. His voice carried the same coldness it had held throughout Jason's childhood, efficient, calculated, devoid of warmth. Jason studied his father's profile. Rob Reiner had built an empire from nothing, clawing his way up through sheer force of will and ruthless determination. He was a man who saw the world in black and white, winners and casualties. There was no room for sentiment in business, no space for weakness. He had raised Jason the same way a general might train a soldier, with discipline, demands, and distance. "When do you need me there?" Jason asked, keeping his voice measured. 3 days. December 1st. "Dad, it's December. I've never been away during the holidays." "Which is precisely why you need to go." Rob finally looked up, his steel-gray eyes meeting Jason's. "The world doesn't stop for Christmas, son. Sentimentality is a luxury we cannot afford. Your mother has made you soft." Jason felt the familiar sting of his father's words. Michelle Reiner had indeed been his sanctuary growing up, the gentle counterbalance to Rob's harsh world. While his father demanded perfection, why 80% when you could achieve 100%? His mother had taught him empathy, kindness, the value of treating people with dignity regardless of their station. "I'll go," Jason said quietly. "But on my terms." Rob's eyebrow arched slightly, the closest thing to surprise he ever displayed. "Your terms? I handle this my way. No interference. No checking in every 5 minutes. You wanted me to prove myself? Let me prove myself." For a long moment, father and son stared at each other across the expanse of the desk. Finally, Rob gave a curt nod. "Fine. But results matter, Jason. Not methods. Not intentions. Results." That evening, Jason sat in his mother's private sitting room, a haven of warmth in their otherwise imposing mansion. Michelle looked up from her book, her gentle eyes filled with understanding. "He'll never say he's proud of you, you know," she said softly, reaching for his hand. "But he is. He's just too much like his father, too afraid that showing love means showing weakness." "I'm exhausted, Mom. Nothing I do is ever enough." Michelle squeezed his hand. "Then maybe this trip is exactly what you need. Maybe fate and Santa have something special planned for you." She kissed his forehead, just as she had done when he was a boy afraid of the dark. Sometimes the best gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. As Jason packed that night, his best friend Hillary Waldorf called, no doubt ready with another scheme to drag him to some party or introduce him to another model or socialite. Jason let it go to voicemail. He'd spent years watching Hillary live the high life, surrounded by people who wore designer labels like armor, hiding hollow hearts beneath perfect smiles. Jason had dated some of them, or tried to. Instagram influencers, beauty queens, daughters of his father's business associates. Each conversation had felt like reading from a script, everything surface level, nothing real. They were attracted to his name, his wealth, his potential power. None of them had ever asked him what kept him up at night or what made him laugh. Tomorrow he would board a commercial flight to Ohio. His father had refused the private jet, another test of his resolve. Tomorrow his carefully constructed life would begin to unravel in the most beautiful way possible. He just didn't know it yet. The first-class cabin of Flight 847 was everything Jason expected. Comfortable, quiet, impersonal. He declined the flight attendant's offer of champagne and stared out the window as Manhattan disappeared beneath cotton-white clouds. Somewhere below, in that maze of steel and ambition, his father was already measuring his performance, calculating his worth in spreadsheets and profit margins. Jason pulled out his tablet and reviewed everything he knew about the Ohio property. The Queen Suite Imperial had once been a crown jewel in the Reiner portfolio, a historic hotel that had hosted presidents and celebrities. But the numbers told a story of decline: occupancy rates down 40%, revenue dropping quarter after quarter, staff turnover approaching 60%. The plane touched down in Columbus just after noon. Jason collected his single carry-on bag. He traveled light, another habit his father had instilled, and headed to the rental counter. Instead of requesting the luxury sedan they had reserved, he pointed to a modest Toyota Prius. "I'll take that one instead." The attendant blinked in confusion but processed the change. Jason smiled. If he was going to understand what was really happening at his father's hotel, he needed to see it through different eyes. His first stop wasn't the Queen Suite Imperial. Instead, Jason checked into the Madison Grand, their biggest competitor. The lobby gleamed with recent renovations: modern chandeliers, plush seating areas, staff members who smiled with genuine warmth. He observed everything: how the front desk handled check-ins, how quickly housekeeping responded to requests, the small touches that made guests feel valued rather than processed. That evening, Jason stood in his competitor's hotel room and looked out at the Columbus skyline. Somewhere out there was his father's struggling property, and somewhere in that building was the answer to what had gone wrong. Tomorrow he would begin his investigation in earnest. But tonight, as snow began to fall softly outside his window, Jason felt something he hadn't experienced in years: freedom. For the first time in his life, he was away from his father's watchful eye, away from the pressure to be perfect, away from the endless parade of superficial relationships and hollow conversations. He didn't know that tomorrow would change everything. He didn't know that a tired waitress with a brilliant smile would crack open the armor he'd spent 28 years building around his heart. Tomorrow Jason Reiner would meet Skye Moore and nothing would ever be the same. December 2nd dawned cold and clear. Jason woke early, his mind already racing through his plan for the day. He would have lunch at the Queen Suite Imperial, observe the service quality, gauge the atmosphere, take mental notes of everything that needed attention. What he didn't plan for was the dining room of the Queen Suite Imperial carried the faded grandeur of better days. Crystal chandeliers hung from ornate ceiling medallions, but some of the crystals were missing. The carpet showed wear patterns and several tables wobbled slightly. Jason chose a corner seat where he could observe the entire room. Then Skye Moore appeared. And the notebook in his hand was forgotten. She moved through the dining room with practiced efficiency, balancing plates with the grace of someone who had done this 1,000 times. But it was her smile that stopped him, genuine and warm despite the obvious exhaustion in her eyes. Dark curls escaped from her ponytail, framing a face that belonged in art museums, not struggling hotel restaurants. "Good afternoon, welcome to Queen Suite Imperial. What can I get started for you?" Her voice was melodic, professional, but Jason caught the slight rasp of weariness beneath it. He ordered without looking at the menu, unable to take his eyes off her. She wore the hotel's outdated uniform, but she carried herself with a dignity that transcended the worn fabric. There was something in the set of her shoulders, the way she met his gaze directly. This was a woman who bowed to no one, despite circumstances that clearly demanded she bend. Throughout his meal, Jason watched her work. She treated every customer with the same warmth, remembered regulars' preferences, handled a difficult diner with patience and grace. When an older couple struggled with their check, she quietly explained the bill without making them feel foolish. When a child dropped his fork, she appeared with a new one and a conspiratorial wink that turned tears into giggles. This was what hospitality was supposed to be, not the sterile efficiency his father prized, but genuine human connection. Jason lingered over coffee he didn't want, hoping for another glimpse, another smile directed his way. When she returned to refill his cup, he opened his mouth to speak, to introduce himself, to say something, anything to prolong the interaction. "Will there be anything else, sir?" The words died in his throat. What could he say? "Hi, I'm Jason Reiner. I actually own this hotel and I'm here because it's failing?" "Hi, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen and I can't stop staring?" "No, thank you. Everything was perfect." She smiled, that devastating genuine smile, and moved to the next table. Jason paid his bill with cash, leaving a generous tip, and walked out feeling like he'd just failed the most important test of his life. The next day he returned, telling himself it was to continue his investigation. He ordered lunch, asked for a table in her section and waited. But Skye wasn't there. A different server approached, older, less energetic, going through the motions without joy. Is Skye working today? The question slipped out before he could stop it. The server gave him a knowing look. Skye's on cleaning duty today, hun. She works every position in this place. Girl never stops. Disappointment crashed through him, sharp and unexpected. He finished his meal quickly and stood to leave. Then, remembering his supposed cover as a guest evaluating the property, he asked for directions to the restrooms on the upper floors. The elevator was empty when he stepped in. He pressed the button for the 5th floor, then the 6th, planning to walk the halls, check room conditions, justify this entire ridiculous mission that had somehow become about seeing a woman whose name he'd only learned from a name tag. The elevator stopped at 5. The doors slid open. And there she was. Skye stood in the hallway, housekeeping cart beside her, hair pulled back in a bandana, wearing a different uniform but somehow even more beautiful in the honest work clothes. She looked up, surprised, and their eyes met. Jason's heart hammered against his ribs. "Hi," he managed. "Hello," she replied, stepping into the elevator. The doors closed, sealing them in that small space together, and Jason realized that his carefully controlled life was about to spiral magnificently out of his control. He wouldn't have had it any other way. "You're the guy from yesterday," Skye said, recognition dawning in her eyes. "The lunch customer." Jason was simultaneously thrilled she remembered and disappointed she remembered him merely as the lunch customer. "Jason," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Jason Miller." The lie tasted bitter but necessary. Her handshake was firm, confident. "Skye Moore." "I'm new to Columbus," he continued, the words tumbling out faster than his usual measured speech. "I was wondering if you might know any good places to see, someone who could show me around the city?" Skye's expression shifted to polite apology. "I'm sorry, I'm really too busy. Between work and other commitments, I barely have time to sleep." The elevator reached the lobby. She stepped out with her cart, offering a small wave before disappearing down a corridor. Jason stood in the empty elevator, feeling oddly bereft. Over the next 2 days, Jason engineered chance encounters. He learned to anticipate her schedule: mornings in housekeeping, afternoon shifts in the restaurant, evening rotations at the front desk. He watched her move through the hotel like a dancer who knew every step, filling gaps wherever they appeared. He also watched the hotel's management. Mr. Bennett, the general manager, ruled through intimidation rather than inspiration. Jason witnessed him berating a young server for a minor mistake, his voice carrying across the lobby. When the girl's eyes filled with tears, Jason's jaw tightened. "Excuse me," he interrupted, his tone carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "That's no way to speak to your staff." Bennett turned, irritation flashing across his face before he smoothed it into professional courtesy for a guest. "Sir, this is an internal matter. It's a matter of basic human decency. The customer at table 7 is watching. So is the family checking in. Is this the image the Queen Suite Imperial wants to project?" Bennett's face reddened, but he moderated his tone, dismissing the server with a curt nod. Jason made a mental note. Bennett was part of the problem. Thursday evening, December 5th, Jason stayed late, observing the night shift operations. The hotel felt different after dark. Emptier, the flaws more obvious, the staff more exhausted. He was heading to his rental car when he spotted a familiar figure standing under the awning, phone pressed to her ear, frustration evident in her posture. "Skye Moore." He approached cautiously. "Everything okay?" She looked up, surprise registering before she sighed. "My Uber canceled. I'm late getting home and my father—" She stopped abruptly, as if realizing she was sharing too much with a virtual stranger. "I can give you a ride," Jason offered immediately. "No, I don't know you." "You're right to be cautious. Take my picture, send it to a friend or the security desk. Text them my license plate. I promise I'm harmless, just someone who doesn't want you standing in the cold." Skye studied him for a long moment. Something in his eyes must have reassured her because she nodded slowly, pulling out her phone to snap his picture. "Okay, thank you." The drive to her apartment complex was 30 minutes through Columbus's quiet streets. Jason kept the conversation light, asking about the city, good restaurants, interesting landmarks. Nothing personal, nothing invasive. But he watched her from the corner of his eye, noting how she worried the strap of her bag, how she kept checking her phone. "Your father?" he asked gently. "He worries when I'm late," she admitted. "He's not well and I'm all he has." When they pulled up to her building, modest, well-maintained, nothing like the luxury Jason took for granted, Skye turned to him with that smile that made his chest ache. "Thank you, Jason." Would you? Would you like to come up for coffee? Everything in him wanted to say yes. But he saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. Next time, he said softly. Her expression flickered with something he couldn't quite read. Next time, she repeated as if testing the words. As he drove away, Jason couldn't stop replaying those two words. Next time. It implied a future, a continuation, a possibility. For someone who'd spent his life surrounded by people but feeling utterly alone, it was the most hopeful phrase he'd ever heard. Friday afternoon, Skye appeared at Jason's usual table during lunch. Before he could order, she set down a glass of water and looked at him with determination warming her dark eyes. Saturday is my day off. If you still want that tour of Columbus, be at my building at noon. Don't be late. Jason's face split into a grin he couldn't contain. I'll be there at 11:59. The hint of a smile tugged at her lips as she walked away, but not before he caught it. Saturday morning, Jason woke at dawn, too excited to sleep. He'd faced boardrooms full of hostile investors without breaking a sweat, but the prospect of spending the day with Skye had him changing outfits 3 times like a nervous teenager. Finally settling on jeans and a casual sweater, clothes that felt foreign after years of tailored suits, he arrived at her building at precisely 11:57. 3 minutes later, Skye emerged from the building and Jason's breath caught. Gone was the tired waitress in a worn uniform. She wore dark jeans, boots, and a burgundy jacket that made her skin glow. Her hair fell in natural curls around her shoulders, and when she smiled at him, the December morning felt suddenly warmer. Ready? She asked, sliding into the passenger seat. Lead the way. Their first stop was the Columbus Museum of Art. Jason had visited countless museums worldwide, the Louvre, the Met, the Prado, always as part of business trips, squeezed between meetings, appreciated with one eye on his watch. But walking through galleries with Skye was different. She moved slowly, studying each piece, sharing observations that revealed depth and education he hadn't expected. You know a lot about art, he commented as they stood before a contemporary installation. I minored in art history, she admitted. Seemed impractical at the time, but it brings me joy. That has to count for something, right? It counts for everything, Jason said, meaning it more than she could know. Next was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, a 2-hour drive filled with conversation that flowed effortlessly. They debated music, argued playfully about the greatest bands, discovered shared loves and passionate disagreements. Jason couldn't remember the last time someone had argued with him, challenged his opinions, treated him like a regular person rather than a name or a wallet. At Cuyahoga Valley National Park, they hiked along trails dusted with snow, their breath creating clouds in the crisp air. Skye moved with confidence through the woods, pointing out birds, telling stories of childhood trips with her parents before her mother got sick. She loved Christmas, Skye said softly, gazing at ice formations along a creek. Even at the end, she insisted on decorating. Dad and I would carry the boxes to her bedroom, and she'd direct us from bed like a general commanding troops. Her laugh was bittersweet. We put the angel on crooked that last year, and she said it was perfect because perfect was boring. Jason reached out, his hand finding hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. She didn't pull away. By late afternoon they were at 16-bit bar plus arcade, bowling and laughing like children. Skye was terrible at bowling and she owned it with such joy that Jason deliberately threw gutter balls just to make her feel better, and to hear her accuse him of letting her win, which led to a competitive rematch she won legitimately, celebrating with a victory dance that made his heart soar. At Condado Tacos they claimed a booth in the back corner. Over build-your-own tacos the conversation deepened. Skye told him about her mother's cancer, the slow deterioration, the hospital bills that had swallowed their savings. She described her father's heart attack 2 years later, how she'd found him collapsed in the kitchen, how the paramedics had said 5 more minutes and he would have died. Medical school had been the plan, she said, staring at her plate. But life had other plans. Now I'm paying down student loans from a hospitality degree while working every shift available at a hotel that's falling apart, caring for a father who's trying to pretend he's not sick for my sake. That's why you work so many positions, Jason realized. You're not just picking up shifts, you're working multiple jobs under one roof. Triple the hours, triple the pay. It's not glamorous, but it keeps us afloat. Tell me about the hotel, Jason said carefully. If it were yours, what would you change? Skye looked hesitant, but something in his expression encouraged her to continue. Everything, she admitted. The staff needs better pay. You can't expect excellent service from people you're barely compensating above minimum wage. We're understaffed, so everyone's exhausted, which means more mistakes, which means Mr. Bennett screaming, which means more people quit. It's a cycle. What else? The rooms need updating. The plumbing is temperamental. The decor is stuck in 1985. But more than the physical space, it's the culture. Hospitality is about making people feel valued, but you can't make guests feel valued when the staff feels disposable. She paused, then added quietly, I wrote a whole business plan once. Redesign proposals, budget projections, staff development programs. It's probably stupid. It's not stupid, Jason interrupted firmly. It's brilliant. Skye, you studied hospitality in university? She nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. Got my degree, graduated with honors. Lot of good it did me. Jason sat back, astounded. Here was someone with education, vision, and passion. Everything his father claimed to value, working as a maid and waitress because life had dealt her an unfair hand. After dinner, they stopped at Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams. As Jason brought their cups to a small table outside, the evening was cold but clear, fairy lights strung between trees creating a magical atmosphere. Skye laughed at something on her phone. When he sat down, she looked up at him, her smile fading into something softer, more serious. You have something. She reached across the small table, her thumb brushing his beard where ice cream had left a trace of evidence. The casual intimacy of the gesture froze them both. Her hand lingered for a heartbeat longer than necessary before she pulled back, handing him a napkin. Thank you, Jason managed, his voice rougher than intended. The drive back to her apartment felt too short. Jason wanted to keep driving, to stretch this perfect day into infinity. When he pulled up to her building, neither of them moved to leave immediately. Can I have your number? Jason asked. I'd like to see you again. Skye's smile was mysterious. If you are at the hotel Monday, maybe you will see me. She slipped out of the car, but before closing the door she leaned back in. Thank you, Jason. It was exactly what I needed. Me too, he said honestly. That night, lying in his hotel room, Jason couldn't stop replaying every moment. Skye's laugh. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams. The casual way she'd wiped ice cream from his beard, that simple touch containing more genuine affection than any of his previous relationships combined. Skye, he thought, testing her name like a prayer. He was falling, and for once in his carefully controlled life, Jason didn't want to stop himself. Sunday morning arrived with a phone call that shattered Jason's peaceful contemplation. You've been in Ohio for a week, and Bennett still hasn't met with you officially? Rob Reiner's voice crackled with irritation through the phone. What kind of operation are you running? Jason sat up in bed, scrubbing a hand over his face. Dad, I told you, my terms? I need to see everything from the ground level before revealing myself. The ground level? You're supposed to be management, not playing detective. And that's exactly the problem, Jason shot back, frustration boiling over. When was the last time you actually spent time in one of our hotels? Talked to the staff who aren't managers? Watched how things actually run instead of just reading reports that have been sanitized by people trying to cover their mistakes? Silence stretched across the line. Finally, Rob spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. Get this done, Jason. I don't care about your methods anymore, I care about results. Fix the hotel or come home. The line went dead. Jason stared at his phone, his father's words echoing in his mind. Results. Always results. Never good job, or I trust you, or I am proud of you. Just demands and disappointment. He spent the rest of Sunday compiling his observations, creating a comprehensive action plan. The problems were systemic: underpaid staff, hostile management, deferred maintenance, and he suspected but needed to confirm, financial irregularities. The hotel's reported losses didn't match the occupancy rates he'd observed. Monday morning, Jason dressed in his best suit, armor for the battle ahead. Instead of the rental car, he drove directly to the Queen Suite Imperial's front entrance. No more hiding. The receptionist looked up with her professional smile. Welcome to Queen Suite Imperial. How can I? She stopped, recognition dawning. Oh, you've been staying with us. Mr. Miller, right? Actually, it's Reiner. Jason Reiner. Please inform Mr. Bennett that I'm here and call an all-staff meeting in the main conference room in 1 hour. Her eyes went wide. Reiner? As in the owner's son. Yes. The next hour was a flurry of activity. Jason watched Bennett scramble, saw staff members whispering, felt the building tension. He sat up in the conference room, reviewing his notes one final time. When the staff filed in, Jason's eyes immediately found Skye. She stood near the back, her expression confused. Their eyes met, and he watched realization crash across her face. Shock, betrayal, hurt. She looked away quickly, arms crossed defensively. Jason's chest tightened, but he had to push forward. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Reiner. My father, Rob Reiner, is the CEO and owner of Queen Suite Imperial. I've been in Columbus for over a week, observing operations, and I need your help to move this hotel forward. Bennett immediately launched into defensive mode. Sir, if you'd informed me of your arrival, I could have prepared proper reports. I didn't want reports, Mr. Bennett. I wanted truth. Jason's gaze swept the room. Please, I need honest feedback. What's working? What's not? Don't worry about consequences, I'm here to listen. Silence. Staff members exchanged nervous glances. No one wanted to be the first to speak, to risk Bennett's wrath later. Except one person. Skye raised her hand, her chin lifted defiantly despite the hurt still visible in her eyes. Yes. Jason said, his heart pounding. She stood, and every eye in the room turned to her. We're not paid fairly according to industry standards. Happy employees create happy guests, but it's hard to be happy when you're working 3 jobs worth of hours for 1 paycheck. The rooms need updates, the plumbing fails regularly, the decor is outdated, and we're constantly understaffed for a hotel with such big ambitions. Bennett's face reddened. That's enough, Miss Moore? Let her finish, Jason commanded, his voice allowing no argument. Skye continued, her voice stronger now. Staff turnover is terrible because people are exhausted and underappreciated. Mr. Bennett runs this hotel through fear, not leadership. We have employees with great ideas who are too afraid to share them because they'll be shut down or mocked. This place could be incredible, but not while we're treated as disposable. The room was silent. Then, emboldened by Skye's courage, other hands began to rise. Voices joined hers, housekeepers talking about supply shortages, maintenance describing equipment failures they'd reported for months, front desk staff explaining guest complaints that were dismissed rather than addressed. Jason listened to everything, making notes, asking clarifying questions. Bennett grew increasingly agitated, trying to regain control of the narrative, but Jason kept redirecting attention to the staff. When the meeting ended 90 minutes later, Jason asked Skye to stay behind. She remained standing as others filed out, her posture rigid. Finally they were alone. Skye. Was any of it real? Her voice was quiet but sharp as broken glass. The tour? The conversation? You needing a friend in a new city? All of it was real, Jason said urgently, moving closer but respecting the space she maintained between them. I couldn't tell you who I was initially because I needed to see the hotel through unbiased eyes. But everything else, every moment we spent together, that was real. You're the most genuine person I've ever met. I wiped ice cream off your face, she said, a bitter laugh escaping. I told you my life story. And you were what? Conducting an interview. No. God no, Skye. You showed me what this hotel could be. What leadership should look like. You treated me like a human being, not a name or a bank account. Do you have any idea how rare that is? She studied him for a long moment, conflict warring across her features. Finally she shook her head. I need to get back to work. Skye. But she was already walking away, leaving Jason standing alone in the conference room, wondering if one necessary deception had cost him the first real connection he'd ever made. The next few days were a masterclass in chaos and restructuring. Jason moved into an office at the hotel, sleeping only a few hours each night as he dove deep into operations. He hired external auditors, brought in contractors to assess renovations, and most importantly, began implementing immediate changes based on staff feedback. He barely saw Skye. She was there, he caught glimpses of her in hallways, passed her during shift changes, but she managed to always be busy, always have somewhere else to be. The few times their eyes met, she looked away quickly. It was driving him insane. On Wednesday, Jason was reviewing contractor bids when a knock interrupted him. Come in, he called, expecting one of the department heads. Skye entered, carrying cleaning supplies. She stopped short when she saw him at the desk. I'm sorry, I'm scheduled to clean the executive offices. It's fine, Jason said quickly, standing. Please, I don't want to interrupt your work. An awkward silence stretched between them. Skye moved to dust shelves and Jason sat back down, pretending to focus on his computer while hyper-aware of her presence. The quiet felt unbearable. I've missed you, he finally said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Her hands stilled on the bookshelf. Mr. Reiner? Jason, please, Skye. It's still just Jason. She turned to face him, and for the first time in days she really looked at him. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, "about what you said about needing to see things clearly. I understand why you did it. I probably would have done the same thing. But it still hurt." "I know. I'm so sorry. Let me finish." She took a breath. "It hurt because I liked you. The guy who was new in town, who listened when I talked, who made me laugh for the first time in months. And then I found out he was also the boss's son, playing pretend." "I wasn't playing pretend," Jason insisted, moving around the desk toward her. "Maybe I lied about my name, but everything else was true. I am new here, I did need a friend, and I more than liked you, Skye. That day we spent together was the best day I've had in years." "Why?" The simple question stopped him. Because she challenged him? Because she saw him as just Jason, not the Reiner heir? Because she made him want to be better? All of that and more. "Because you're real," he said finally. "Everyone I've known my entire life wants something from me. My father wants perfection, my friends want access, the women I've dated wanted status. But you argued with me about music. You laughed when you lost at bowling. You told me the truth about this hotel without knowing I could fix it. You asked for nothing except that I show up on time." Skye's expression softened slightly. "Your father," she said, switching topics in that way she had of seeing deeper. "He's hard on you. That's putting it mildly. Have you talked to him about it? Really talked about it?" Jason laughed bitterly. "You can't talk to Rob Reiner. You receive instructions, meet expectations, or fail. There's no middle ground for conversation. Everyone deserves to be heard," Skye said firmly. "Even difficult fathers. Especially difficult fathers because they're probably difficult for a reason." She paused, then added softly, "Please sit down. I want to show you something." She pulled her phone from her pocket, scrolling through folders until she found what she wanted. "This," she said, showing him the screen, "is the business proposal I mentioned. I wrote it 6 months ago." Jason took the phone, reading through a comprehensive plan that was nothing short of brilliant. Staff development programs, incremental renovation schedules, marketing strategies targeting Columbus's growing tourism sector, sustainable practices that would reduce costs while appealing to environmentally conscious travelers. "This is incredible," he breathed. "Skye, this is exactly what this hotel needs." "Then use it," she said. "I wrote it because I care about this place, about the people who work here. Use whatever helps." Their eyes met and Jason made a decision. "I want you to implement it. Not me, you." "What?" "I'm creating a position, assistant to the director of operations. You'll work directly with me, oversee staff welfare, help manage the renovation process. The business plan is yours, you should be the one to execute it." "Jason, I'm a waitress and housekeeper. You're a hospitality professional with vision and education who's been underutilized because you were dealt a difficult hand. Let me change that." He paused, then added, "I'm also approving immediate salary increases for all staff and hiring to address understaffing. Starting with you." Tears welled in Skye's eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because it's right. Because you're right. And because—" He took a chance, reaching for her hand. She didn't pull away. "Because I meant what I said about wanting to be friends. And friends help each other succeed." Skye squeezed his hand, a small smile finally breaking through. "Friends," she repeated, though something in her tone suggested the word felt insufficient for what was growing between them. Over the next week they fell into a rhythm. Skye proved to be everything Jason had hoped: organized, innovative, and beloved by the staff. She knew everyone's names, their families, their struggles. When Jason implemented wage increases, she cried. When he fired Bennett after the external auditors uncovered evidence of embezzlement, she stood beside him, helping navigate the transition. They worked late most nights, reviewing plans, discussing strategy, and somewhere in those hours, friendship deepened into something neither could ignore. Jason learned about Skye's father Bruce, a proud man struggling with illness and poverty. Skye learned about Jason's complicated relationship with Rob, the pressure of impossible expectations. "You need to talk to him," she said one evening as they shared takeout in the office. "Before all this resentment hardens into something permanent. You don't know my father." "No, but I know you. And I know you'll regret it if you don't at least try." Jason changed the subject, but her words stayed with him, planted seeds in soil he'd thought too barren for growth. December 17th arrived with a call from Michelle Reiner. "Young man, you haven't called your mother in a week. I was beginning to think Ohio had swallowed you whole." Guilt flooded through Jason. "I'm sorry, Mom. Things have been busy." "Busy?" His mother's knowing laugh carried through the phone. "Or distracted." You sound different, Jason. Happier. I found purpose, he admitted, thinking of everything he and Skye had accomplished. Purpose? His mother's voice danced with amusement. Is that her name? Mom? I can hear her in your voice, sweetheart. I'm happy for you. Will you be home for Christmas? Jason glanced across the office where Skye was on another call, her expression animated as she discussed renovation timelines. I'm not sure. Bring her, Michelle said simply. Whoever she is, bring her home. Let me meet the woman who's made my son remember how to smile. That evening, Jason asked Skye on what he described as a proper date. No work talk allowed. They went to a small Italian restaurant tucked into a booth in the back, and for the first time, Jason shared everything. His father's expectations, his mother's quiet strength, his friend Hillary's endless attempts to turn him into someone he wasn't, the parade of shallow relationships that had left him feeling more alone than solitude ever had. They wanted me for what I represented, he said, pushing pasta around his plate. My name, my money, my connections. None of them asked what I wanted or who I was beneath all that. What do you want? Skye asked softly. Jason looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered how he'd lived 28 years without knowing what was missing. This, he said honestly. Someone who argues with me about music. Who calls me out when I'm wrong. Who sees me, not my last name. I see you, Skye whispered. They talked about his dysfunctional relationship with Rob, and again Skye encouraged him to bridge the gap. Life's too short, Jason. Trust me. When my mom died, I was grateful for every conversation we'd had, every I love you we exchanged. Don't wait until it's too late to tell your father how you feel. Jason deflected, but her words burrowed deep. 2 days later, he asked her to spend Christmas with him. I know you have your father, and I wouldn't dream of taking you away from him. But maybe I could join you both? If that's okay? Skye's smile was answer enough. Christmas Eve was magical. Jason arrived at Skye's apartment with gifts. A new watch for Bruce, a leather journal for Skye, and enough food to feed a small army. Bruce greeted him warmly, his health visibly improved thanks to the treatment Jason had quietly arranged and paid for through the hotel's suddenly generous health insurance plan. They decorated a small tree, sang carols that Bruce remembered from better days, and cooked dinner together in the tiny kitchen. Jason had spent Christmases in mansions, attended galas that cost more than most people earned in a year, but he'd never felt the warmth he found in that cramped apartment. Late that evening, as Bruce dozed in his recliner and Christmas movies played softly on TV, Jason and Skye stood by the window, watching snow fall over Columbus. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. The job, my father's treatment, believing in me. Thank you, Jason countered, for saving me from a life of perfect emptiness. They turned toward each other, and the space between them disappeared. The kiss was inevitable, written in every shared glance, every late-night conversation, every moment they'd been dancing around this for weeks. When they finally parted, both breathless, Skye laughed against his lips. Merry Christmas, Jason Reiner. Merry Christmas, Skye Moore. Boxing Day brought another gift. His personal auditors confirmed what Jason had suspected. Bennett had been embezzling funds for months, artificially inflating expenses while pocketing the difference. The hotel wasn't failing due to market conditions or location. It was being bled dry from within. Jason documented everything, building an airtight case. He also finalized his comprehensive renovation plans, secured contractors, and prepared his final report for his father. The Queen Suite Imperial wasn't just salvageable, it was going to thrive. But first he had a father to confront. December 28th dawned gray and cold. Rob Reiner arrived unannounced, his driver pulling up to the Queen Suite Imperial in a black town car that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Jason watched from his office window, his stomach knotting with familiar dread. He's here, he told Skye, who was reviewing staffing schedules at the conference table. She stood, moving beside him. Remember what we talked about. Stand your ground. The meeting was supposed to be a review of progress, Jason presenting his findings, his father evaluating the results. Instead, it became a battlefield. Rob strode into the office like he owned it, which technically he did, and immediately launched into criticism. You fired Bennett? He was a longtime employee, a friend. He was an embezzler, Jason interrupted, sliding the audit report across the desk. He's been stealing from this hotel for 18 months. I have documentation, bank records, everything you need to prosecute. Rob barely glanced at the papers. And the accountant? You fired him too. He was complicit. Dad, the hotel wasn't failing because of external factors. It was being systematically robbed from inside. That's not the point. Rob's voice rose, that familiar tone that had cowed Jason since childhood. You don't make these decisions without consulting me. You don't? Actually, I do. Jason stood, matching his father's energy. You sent me here with full authority. You said your terms. Well, these were my terms, to fix what was broken, even when what was broken were your friends and your poor judgment in trusting them. Rob's face reddened dangerously. He turned to Skye, who'd been silent until now. And who are you? Skye Moore, Director of Staff Relations and Operations, she said calmly. I don't care what you manage. This is a private conversation. No, Jason said firmly. Skye stays. She's been integral to every positive change in this hotel. The staff morale is up, turnover has stopped, guest satisfaction scores have increased 40%. Guest satisfaction? Rob laughed bitterly. We measure success in profit, Jason, not feelings. Profit is up too, Skye interjected, her voice steady despite Rob's glare. Occupancy rates have increased from 52% to 78% in 3 weeks. This hotel is now the top-rated destination in Columbus for Christmas travelers. We're fully booked through New Year's and taking reservations into February. The numbers support everything Jason has implemented. I don't need a maid lecturing me on business. The words hit like a slap. Jason saw Skye flinch, saw her chin lift defensively, and something inside him snapped. That's enough, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You will not speak to her that way. Skye has a hospitality degree, innovative ideas, and more emotional intelligence than any executive I've ever met. She's been instrumental in turning this hotel around. She's a distraction, Rob countered. I can see it in your eyes, you're compromised. This is exactly why I didn't want you getting involved with staff. She's not a distraction. She's my partner. In business and, Jason took a breath, making a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. And in life. Rob's expression turned cold. You're fired. What? If she's so important, if you're willing to compromise this business for some girl? Don't call her that, Jason warned. Then you're fired. Both of you. Now. The office fell silent. Jason looked at his father, really looked at him, and saw not the titan of industry but a frightened man whose only language was control, whose only currency was domination. Fine, Jason said quietly. Then I resign. If you fire Skye, I walk away from everything. Jason, Skye grabbed his arm, panic in her voice. No, your career, your family. Means nothing if I can't stand up for what's right. He kept his eyes on his father. You taught me to be strong, Dad. To never back down. Well, I'm not backing down now. Skye stays or I go. Your choice. Father and son stared at each other across an impossible gulf. Finally, Rob turned sharply and strode from the office, slamming the door behind him. Jason's legs went weak. He sank into a chair, the weight of what he'd just done crashing over him. He'd just walked away from his inheritance, his career, his entire future. Skye knelt beside him, taking his hands. Why would you do that? Because, Jason said, meeting her eyes, you're worth more than any empire. And if I've learned anything these past few weeks, it's that success without integrity is just another word for failure. That night, they sat in Skye's living room with Bruce, discussing options. Jason was calm now, energized even. I want to start my own hotel, he announced. Something built on the principles we've proven here, staff first, community focused, sustainable practices. With what capital? Bruce asked pragmatically. I have a trust fund my grandfather left me. It's substantial. And I have experience, connections, and, he smiled at Skye, a brilliant partner who knows this industry inside and out. You're serious, Skye breathed. Completely. Will you build something with me? Something ours? Before Skye could answer, Jason's phone rang. His mother's name flashed on the screen. Jason, what happened? Michelle's voice was urgent but not angry. Your father came home, locked himself in his office. I quit, Mom. Or he fired me. It's complicated. Because of the girl? Because of principles. Because of self-respect. Because I'm done being treated like a soldier instead of a son. His mother was quiet for a moment. Then, good. What? Good, Michelle repeated firmly. I'm proud of you, Jason. It was past time someone stood up to your father. In fact, hold on. Muffled voices, then Rob's voice came on the line, gruff and uncomfortable. Your mother is insistent that I call you. Hello, Dad. Silence. Then, the hotel numbers. They're good. Better than good. I know. And the staff satisfaction surveys. Also improved. Yes. More silence. Jason waited, refusing to make this easier. Maybe. Rob struggled with the words like they were foreign objects. Maybe I was hasty. About firing you. And the girl, Skye. Her name is Skye, Dad. And I'm not coming back unless you can treat her, treat all of us, with basic respect. This world isn't kind, Jason. I raised you to be tough because the world was tough to you, Jason interrupted gently. I know. But perpetuating that cycle doesn't honor what you've overcome, it just creates more pain. You can be strong and kind. You can demand excellence and offer praise. They're not mutually exclusive. The silence stretched so long Jason thought his father had hung up. Then barely audible, I'm sorry. Jason's eyes filled with tears. 2 words he'd waited his entire life to hear. Come back to work. Both of you. Your terms. After they hung up, Jason sat with the phone in his hand, stunned. Skye wrapped her arms around him and he leaned into her embrace, feeling pieces of himself he'd thought broken begin to heal. We still start our own hotel, he said firmly. But maybe we can help fix his empire first. That night, as snow fell softly outside and Bruce snored in the next room, Jason and Skye began sketching plans for their future, both immediate and distant. Somewhere between dreams and designs, Jason realized he'd found something he'd been searching for without knowing it existed. Home, not a place but a person. He kissed the top of Skye's head, breathing in the coconut scent of her shampoo, and silently thanked whatever force had sent him to Ohio in December. New Year's Eve arrived with the sharp clarity of fresh beginnings. The Queen's Suite Imperial glittered with lights, fully booked with guests celebrating the arrival of a new year. Jason stood in the renovated lobby, fresh paint, updated furniture, happy staff, and marveled at how much could change in a single month. But the biggest change was happening tonight. At the stroke of midnight, surrounded by falling balloons and champagne toasts from hotel guests, Jason dropped to one knee. Skye's hands flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. December gave me a miracle, Jason said, his voice carrying over the celebratory noise. It gave me purpose, clarity, and you. Skye Moore, will you marry me and build a life together? Hotels, adventures, everything? Yes, she laughed through tears. Yes, yes, yes. The lobby erupted in cheers from guests and staff alike. Bruce stood nearby, wiping his eyes unashamedly while Michelle Reiner, who'd flown in secretly for the occasion, beamed with joy. Even Rob managed something resembling a smile. They were married 5 days later in a small, intimate ceremony. Just family and close friends. Skye's father Bruce, Jason's parents Rob and Michelle Hillary Waldorf, who'd flown in with a toast about Jason finally finding someone real, and Skye's best friend Anna, who'd been sworn to secrecy and nearly burst from keeping it in. The ceremony was held in the Queen's Suite Imperial's renovated ballroom, transformed with fairy lights and winter flowers. As Jason and Skye exchanged vows, promising partnership, adventure, and love through all of life's seasons, Rob Reiner stood beside Michelle, holding her hand tightly, perhaps remembering his own wedding day and the dreams that had slowly calcified into demands. Later, Rob pulled Jason aside. I'm not good at this, he admitted gruffly. The emotional stuff. Your mother is better at it. I know, Dad. But I am. Rob struggled, then forced out, I am proud of you. What you did here with the hotel, with your life. You're a better man than I was at your age. Jason embraced his father, and for the first time in memory, Rob hugged back. As the small reception continued, Jason and Skye slipped out onto the hotel's balcony, where snow fell softly over Columbus. The city lights sparkled like earthbound stars, and somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. What are you thinking? Skye asked, leaning against him. That a month ago, I was the loneliest person I knew, Jason admitted. I had everything, money, status, opportunity, and nothing that mattered. Now I have you and I finally understand what wealth actually means. What's that? Having someone to share it with. Building something that matters. Going home to a person who sees past the surface to who you really are. Skye turned in his arms, her wedding ring catching the light. I love you, Jason Reiner. I love you, Skye Reiner, he replied, still delighting in her new name. They kissed as snow continued to fall, two souls who'd found each other in the most unexpected of circumstances, in the most magical of seasons. Inside the ballroom, the party continued. Rob and Michelle danced together, something they hadn't done in years. Bruce chatted with Hillary, swapping stories. Anna caught the bouquet with a shriek of laughter. And in a corner booth, wedding presents sat wrapped and waiting, including one from Rob, a set of keys and a deed to a property in Chicago. For your hotel, the card read. Show me what you can build. Together. Dad. December had indeed delivered miracles. But as Jason held Skye close, watching snow transform Columbus into a winter wonderland, he realized the real miracle wasn't the reconciliation with his father or the saved hotel or the sudden wedding. The real miracle was learning that sometimes you have to lose your way completely to find where you truly belong. And Jason Reiner belonged here, in Skye's arms, building a future neither of them had imagined but both deserved. As the clock chimed 1 a.m., marking not just a new year but a new life, Jason whispered against Skye's hair, "Thank you for showing me what December could be. Thank you for making me believe in miracles again," she whispered back. And somewhere in the cosmos, fate and Santa smiled, knowing their work. This time at least it was complete. Please subscribe and comment for more lovely stories.